Very nice to see so many people in this beautiful theater. It's really, really pretty. Today I would like to share with you, I introduced myself. My name is Daan Lucas. I'm the founder and the managing director of Random Studio. And today I would like to share with you why I started the studio and how it has evolved until where it is right now. And then also I would like to share an ambition that I have for the future. But before, I would like to tell you the why. And I have to go back to the beginning of the 90s where I was studying in Amsterdam. And just around the corner from the university, there was this club called the Roxy. And this club was founded by the guy on the right. He was an artist, Kikk. And he bought this old movie theater. It allowed for about 700 people. And he turned this space, and it had a little bit of the vibe of this theater as well. But he turned it into a really weird, mystique, interesting club. And he named it the Roxy. And the Roxy stood for the radical outlet for the xenomaniac in you. And the xenomaniac, I don't know if you know what that means, but I looked it up, and it means that these are people that are always looking for the strange, for the new, always trying to explore. That's what they need. And that was really what this club was about. They changed the interior every single 5 weeks, so it was really cool. When you would go back, the place would be completely different. They would hang up like 250 disco balls, or they have like a lot of inflatables, so the place would feel completely different every single 5 weeks. And they also had really strange acts. They really tried many things. Some were good, some were less good, some were really disgusting, and some were just strange. And the one that I remember was, at some night there was this huge egg in the middle of the dance floor, and nothing really happened with it. People were just dancing around it. And then at 2 a.m. it cracked open, and this guy covered with white powder just screamed and ran out. And that was the act. So they really played all the time. And why I am telling you this is because the experience that I had in this club laid the foundation for the studio that we have right now. Because what happened in this club, because they were always experimenting, because they were always trying new things, everything was possible. And that had a reflection on the people that visited that space. Because you felt invited to start playing yourself. I mean, I started dressing weird. My mom was like, "What are you doing?" And you start dancing weird, and because you're not afraid. And everyone picks that up. No one is afraid anymore to express him or herself. And when that happens, a kind of fear falls off your shoulders. And then you really connect to other people. And you really connect to the space. And that feeling of connectedness made me feel alive. And I thought, this is what I want. This is what I want with my career. And then, unfortunately, Kikk, he died. And to honor his club, they set off fireworks in the club, and the fireworks ended up in the air conditioning, and then the whole place burned down. It burned down, and I was like, "Oh man, it's gone!" And now I have to do something about it. So I started to organize parties myself, and I did around 6. But I didn't make any money, and I was turning almost 30, and I was like, I need to do something with my career. So I started to design websites, and so I kind of entered into the world of technology and the internet. And I was I was a young development. Everyone was pioneering, and I went to this festival, a creative tech festival. It's quite similar to a festival like we're having here now. This one was off in Barcelona about 13 years ago. And what I saw there really reminded me of the energy that I saw in the Roxy. There were a lot of different people from all over the world, from all kinds of different disciplines. You would have tons of different developers coding open frameworks and processing and other languages. You had 3D specialists, you had people playing with digital printing, a lot of different people pioneering together and making new things. And I didn't feel that there was a lot of ego involved. There was a lot of curiosity involved and a lot of love for the making involved. And I was like, this is it. This is where I want to be. So I went to a few of these festivals and I met these guys. It's Jeffrey Littleman and Anita Fontaine, and they had a studio called Champagne Valentine, and they had just moved to Amsterdam. And random at the time was me and 5 other people, mostly technical-oriented people, and I invited them in to work together. And because I felt that there was something valuable in combining technology and art, and these guys were new media artists, so they were also playing in that field. And by collaborating with them, we started to build a name for ourselves, because we were putting out technology artistic pieces also for commercial clients, and that really, really helped. I'll show you a few examples to give you a bit of an idea what we did in the early days. This is for Fornasetti. Fornasetti is an Italian designer from the last century, and he only worked with a compass and some rulers and a pencil, and we wanted to make a little interactive that celebrated his tools. And then when we didn't have so much work, we just started to explore a little bit. And then Jeff was an illustrator, and he made these really weird drawings. And then we had a guy who was really good at making little animations. We used a lot of Flash. And then we created this little microsite for Valentine's Day to send off to people. And it was called I Love You Like a Fat Lady Loves Apples. And basically it was a small interactive where you would have to eat apples. And then when you had eaten a lot of apples, you would get stabbed in the back. And didn't make any sense, but it was fun to make. And fortunately, we changed our direction a little bit after this, and we went into the physical space. We became interested in how can we use technology and interactivity in the world that we live in. Because the screen, you can't touch it. A lot of people visited your website or your whatever, but you can't meet these people. You can't feel a website, right? So I became interested in that domain. And we did our own little projects to get a feel for what that could be. And then we created these crazy puppets.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Littleman, and I had the opportunity to work with Michael Peltier and Random Studio to develop these mechanical cats. And the process started when Mike was doing research on these sort of kinetic systems that Theo Jansen had developed, making his wind beast strand sculptures. And the way these creatures moved was very interesting, and so we basically took those motions and did some mechanical tests, having the Adreno control these little motors and build these walk cycles. And from there, the first thing that came to mind was, wow, these things really have this quadped kind of movement to them. And so we took the approach of giving it this aesthetic, which was these psychedelic cats that were all drawn in Illustrator. And then from there, the challenges, came up of like, all right, how do you draw this thing so that when it's cut out, it still works. It still works on the mechanic system that he had built. And so with some trial and error, we were able to make 12 of these things and laser cut them out, put them into the mechanical templates, and put it up on a window. In this case, we set it up in front of our studio and backlit it with projectors. And this gave this old feeling of like a nostalgic shadow puppet, something similar to Lotte Renegade when she was doing that in the 20s.
And from this installation, we got a lot of other installations. We started to get recognized for it. So we did quite a lot of Nike stuff, and then KLM came to us and they said, we want to create a marble machine that illustrates the way people board a plane. And then we created this project, which was really, really fun to do. It took a long time, but it was really fun. And I want to show you one more project that gives you an idea of where we are kind of right now. This is a project that we did for Louis Vuitton. We've done a few projects with them. They have a traveling exhibition that is about traveling. And this one was in New York, and the briefing basically was, can you create an installation that revolves around New York? And we thought, well, let's make a subway. And this is a huge 20-meter LED screen, and we created, this digital subway. And we wanted to add like huge fans so you could really feel like the subway coming in and add sound to it. Unfortunately, we couldn't do that anymore, but still it was a highly technically interesting and challenging project, but worked really well. So now we're here, and I'm thinking like, okay, if I'm thinking back at the Roxy, what did I feel there? That feeling of freedom and connecting to people and the space itself. Did I really get to that goal where I am now? Like, I'm really proud of where we are right now. But obviously, you want to think about what's the next move, right? And I think those values that I saw there in the Roxy, why I started this company in the first place, I think they can be represented even more in the work that I want to be doing in the future. But before I tell you how I think I can do that, we can do that, we did some research on the state of the world today, on how humans and technology and the space that we live in relate to each other. Because obviously that's the domain that we operate in. If we're going to create experiences, you got to know what kind of domain you're working in. And then if you see what is going on in the world, I mean, I was, in '95, I think I bought my first computer, and you still had to dial into the internet, and I don't know if you guys know this, but you had like a phone modem, and it went like, and it was like 4K download, and I didn't even know how to type in a URL, and now, 25 years later, you see that technology is everywhere. And I think Bill Gates said in 10 or 15 years, everything in our life will be touched digitally. So that's a huge change in a relatively small period of time. And what does that mean for us, human beings, like all of us here? What does that mean? Because if you see how we consume digital data in such an enormous way, it also has a huge effect on us. You see that a lot of people are on social media, and these social media platforms, they promise that we humans are connected, and we create a connected world, and it's all great. But obviously, what you see is that people are posting only when they're happy and they're feeling good and they're on a holiday, but no one is really vulnerable on these things. No one is saying, oh, I feel terrible today, and I don't have any money, and I'm not succeeding in school or whatever. So I think to connect with someone, you also have to be open and vulnerable, so there can be an exchange. But what you see on social media, it's almost a solo experience, only talking about him or her. And research has shown that it makes people very lonely and sad. And then another thing is the way we consume this digital data is usually through the big tech companies. And as the previous talk showed, these guys are also not so worried about bringing out the best human in us. They're not trying to think, like, how can we create the best society? No, they're mostly worried about harvesting your data and creating the best profile so they can sell it to their clients. And to create these really strong profiles, these valuable profiles, they will feed us stuff that is in line with that profile, which means that we will not be confronted with something new, because it needs to fit within that template. And that's challenging, because that kills originality, that also kills ambiguity, that kills creativity. And also what is happening, and I do this myself as well, there is an app for everything these days. There's an app for life, in a way. If I want to order some food, I grab my phone and I got a pizza. If I want to listen to some music, I open up Spotify and have access to, I don't know how many songs, like millions and millions of songs. Whereas back in the day, if I wanted to listen to some new music, I'd call a friend. It's like, hey, is there anything else? Have you heard anything interesting? And then we would have a debate on what was good or not good. And then I would go to the record store, and maybe the guy at the counter will argue with me because my taste is lousy. And then I'm waiting in line to pay for my records, and there's 10 people that I have a discussion with as well. So what you see is that with all this efficiency that has entered our lives, which feels like great, it's actually cutting out the human interaction. And there's recent research showed that if you ask people that commute every day in the subway, if you ask these people, would you like it if you sit down today and a stranger comes to you and starts a conversation just out of the blue? Would you like that? Everyone says, no, I don't want that. But then they did research and set the situation up where people were confronted with a stranger talking to them, and they asked them afterwards, did you like your ride better now or without that human contact? I think 80% said they liked it more. So funny enough, our brain says we don't want a connection with people, but if we do have a connection, it makes us a lot happier. So this is a strange thing that we humans do. We kind of trick ourselves. And then lastly, I have this app on my mobile phone which says, it's a screen time app. It tells me how many hours a day I spend on this phone, and it's around 2 hours on average. And then that's not even counting the time I spend on that laptop. I think on average I spend around 8 hours a day in the virtual world, interacting with this virtual world through a piece of glass. And what does that mean? That means that we're not spending my most energetic hours of the day in the world that we humans evolved in, where we know how to navigate effortlessly, where we know how to connect, how we interact with each other. If I would be talking to one of you, and you bend your body like this, or I'm here on stage and I'm a bit insecure because then I talk too fast. See, my breath is high. You all feel that, and all these things you can feel that because we've evolved into the real world, the rich world where we know so much intuitively, and we're spending all our waking hours in the virtual world where we're not in the physical world, where we connect with the space around us and the people around us. So this is a concern. And I know, I know this probably sounds like I'm not old-fashioned. I mean, maybe I am, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's something that I think we have to think about. Because this is what is happening. And technology is not a bad thing. Technology is also not a good thing. Technology is a thing. It is what it is, right? And we can choose how we interact with it, what we do with it. And we have this idea as a studio to enter the domain of interactive space. And what I mean with that is that the technology and the physical world become one. And the good thing about that promise is that, first of all, we pull ourselves away from the screen. We end up in a physical and in a rich world where we meet each other and where we connect with the space. That's one really great example of advantage. But secondly, we're not throwing away technology. Technology is great. I love technology. Why? Because technology allows for interactivity. Technology is real time. Technology allows us to be connected always, every time, anywhere. So it has a huge amount of advantages. So if you bring this rich digital culture, but bring it into the physical space, we hope to bring the best of both worlds into one domain. And you have to bear with me a little bit. I'm going to now, the rest of the talk, I'm going to try to explain what I mean with it by showing some examples and some tests that we have done. But my story will not be done. It will not be super cohesive because we are really pioneering this. I think we started to research this almost 6 months ago. So it might feel a little bit shaky here and there, but maybe open your mind and think about, okay, what could happen if we really would do that? If we turn a space into a computer, what kind of possibilities would open up? And the way we look at interactive space is like a tech theater. Our studio, we try to create experiences where we surprise people, where we invite them to explore, to invite them to connect with other people. So it's not a very efficient approach, not to say that it is wrong, but we always try to create experience with a soul. Now I'm going to show you a project that we finished about 6 months ago. And it was for Chanel. And the key thing that I think, the key takeaway of showing this project is that this is the first project that we did where we changed their flagship store on Place de Vendôme. There's a 3-story place. We changed it, we turned it into a space that behaved as one entity. So we connected the sound, the lighting, the content on the screens, and also some physical elements, and we connected them all together as one body. So you can see in the project that you can tell. And if you look at this image, this is one of the big rooms where you look out on Place de Vendôme. These windows are actually not windows, but they're screens, and we recreated what you would see normally through the windows. And we did that because that way we could control the lighting of the day. The film will explain more.
My favorite time of the day is sunset. Golden hour, everything's that beautiful golden light.
One of my first memories was trying on my mom's Chanel pumps when I was 1.5 or 2. It's 4 o'clock.
$7:30.
Timing, that word timing, is so important.
My first memory is my mum washing clothes in the bath and the sun streaming through the window.
It's all about seconds.
Another project that we did in China for New Balance, they launched a new shoe, and we created a space which felt a little bit like a James Turrell space. James Turrell is a American light artist, and he creates these spaces where you don't see the boundaries of the room, and he uses these kind of colors as well, and it feels like you're walking in eternity. And here as well, you could feel that the space reacts as one. The behavior feels like from one entity. So if you take the shoe, it will change the sound and the light in that space, and so give it a different feeling. This project is something that we didn't do. It's a project by an artist, Ian Cheng, and he created this project in the Serpentine Gallery. And he's playing with the idea of creating an artwork that is almost sentient. Like he will talk about this in the film. The reason why I show you this is because what I think could be an interesting attribute to an interactive space is that it can change, and it is not predictable. I think we humans, we will be able to fall in love with robots, but not if they're predictable, because then they're too boring. So I think what we find interesting is if things constantly change. Right now, we would make, for example, if we would make an installation for Nike, it would be an installation within their retail space. As a visitor to that space, you will go into a retail, there's the installation, you go to the installation, you'll have your experience, and that's done. I'm curious to see, okay, how can we design this whole retail space? And as you go through it, the space changes. And this could be because there's more people in the space. This could be because the temperature rises. This could be because the time is changing. You could have all kinds of variables that we could make the change, make the space dynamic. So it's constantly changing. I think that's a very interesting idea.
A deep desire to see art that had a sense of aliveness and that could change over time and be a bit more out of control in terms of its authorship for me. More and more, I've come to feel that I want to make art with a nervous system. And by that I mean art that can react and learn on its own and can react to you or me as a viewer. I think art with a nervous system starts to become something that feels sentient, that has its own agency, and you would forgive it for not behaving. We expect art in a museum or an institution to behave perfectly as planned to the perfection of the artist. And I'm trying to both adapt myself as personally and my work to be more pliable or adaptable to change.
Another aspect of interactive space is how would we interface? How would we interact with the digital layer that is in this space? And I'll give you a few examples of how we think that is possible. The starting point from our point of view is create interfaces that we know as humans, that feel human. This is a project that we did for an art fair in Rotterdam. And here we took a ball as an interface to control the sun on this big screen. And we all know what a ball is. We know that you can bounce it, you know that you can roll it. So it's very intuitive to use a ball as an interface. If kids get it, then you know it's good. This is another project that we did for Nike. They released a new shoe. The promise of that shoe was a sole that had a new technology. It was called an auxetic technology. The promise was that the sole would adjust to not only your foot, but also to the floor or the ground that you would be walking on. So we created an installation that would make that technology tangible. So not only explain it, but explain it in a tangible way, because it was such a tangible technology. Created a fixture, and on this fixture is a piece of fabric that you can push. And as you push it, it changes the projection that is from behind. Another thing that we're looking at is how would people, without going for a literal interface like a ball or something like that, like I just showed you, how can people interact with an interactive layer within a space? And I'll show you one. I mean, I don't have answers to all of that, but I'll show you at least one project that does that. This is actually another project that we did for Louis Vuitton. Here, what you see is actually a big 90 square meter LED wall, and it was the entrance to an exhibition. So that black surface is the entrance to an exhibition that lay behind the big screen. And if you would enter, this space, your body would act as an interface to control the plane. And we created the visuals were created in a game engine, so they were dynamic, so we could change what you would see and what you would interact with. But I like the idea of using your body as an interface, because it's, again, very intuitive. So the last thing I would like to show you is this is our studio. And what we're currently doing is we're creating a digital infrastructure in the studio, meaning we're trying to build an infrastructure that allows us to design different scenographies, different behavior in a space. So we can explore and see if it even makes sense what we're thinking. So instead of these lights that you have here, we created this LED grid that goes all over the ceiling. And the first project that we did with this lighting grid is our studio is actually in the middle of a building block. So in the winter, the sun goes down, as you all know, and then we don't get any direct sunlight, which leaves us with a very flat light for about 5 months. And funny enough, obviously, like if you do feel the sun, it also gives you a sense of time and so a sense of life. So we took the coordinates of where the sun would be, and we now have a glowing ball of light slowly traveling through the studio to bring that feeling of the sun back. And then the next thing we added to this interactive grid was these speakers here. And these speakers are from a 4D sound system, and they allow for spatial sound. And this is interesting for us because now we can control spatial sound, but also spatial light, because we can control every single LED in this light control, which means that it's quite a long studio. We can start, for example, let light and sound travel together, like that. So I will show you a few examples, and these are really technical tests. They don't have a concept, and they're not really pretty, but hopefully you see that there might be something there. Here, for example, we let a wave go through the studio. And this one is a little bit more obvious because it's a thunderstorm. But I'm interested to see, okay, how would it be if we look at the weather outside, and how can we mimic that inside? How can we look at our own space within the context of a larger space? Would that change how we feel and how we would connect to that space if we would, create these kind of behaviors? So I'll show you one more. This is more of a club again. It appeals to me, but. The reason why I'm showing these things because this is a start of an infrastructure. I could imagine that we could add a lot of extra things here. You could have a smoke machine, a wind machine, or more subtle things to create all kinds of different behaviors. And that's what we're testing out now. What can this interactive space be, and what kind of behaviors could affect what? It's a really like a super fascinating domain for us. So I want to end now. What I felt in the Roxy, to come back to the beginning again, is a lot of love for that space, that club that always pushed things and then kind of invited me to create myself and so connect to the people in the space and to the building. And I want to use technology in the physical space to bring back people away from their screens and bring them together again. So together we can dance on the bits and the bytes. Merci.